This video is presented by Chesco Sports, your one-stop shop for sports betting content. Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. This week we'll be breaking down Dana Whites Contender Series Week 8. Obviously, if you haven't seen these videos, I give my prediction to each fight and give a little breakdown of how I think I see it going. Last week we finished 3-1-1 because obviously there was that draw between Talita Alencar and Stephanie Luciano. In that breakdown, I went on record and said that I don't think either fighter is UFC caliber, and even after the fight I would probably double down on that and say that I don't think either of them are UFC caliber. Stephanie Luciano obviously got awarded the contract even though it was a draw. I do think she did enough to win that fight. Obviously I did predict that she would pick up the underdog win in that video. I do think she did enough. I think the fact that the last round was a 10-8 I do think is fair, and that's what caused it to be a draw because they gave the first two rounds to Alencar. But I don't think Alencar did enough in those rounds to really say that she did win those rounds comfortably. So I do think it was a bit unfortunate that we went 3-1-1 instead of 4-1, but that's the way the cookie crumbles in predictions. Hopefully this week we can bounce back and get on the winning trail again. The last few weeks we've predicted more winners than we have losers, so I suppose there's a slight positive in that. But yeah, let's get straight into the breakdown. And the first fight we've got is Vinicius Oliveira versus Victor Hugo Madrigal. Vinicius Oliveira is really unorthodox. He's a really unorthodox fighter. He's a really kind of erratic fighter. He uses a lot of hooks, a lot of looping hooks coming into range instead of kind of striking his way into range with a jab or feints or anything like that. He is a creative striker though. He'll use his leg kicks well, and he'll mix them up. His striking defence is quite questionable though. He doesn't really keep his hands up. He keeps his hands down and just tries to evade strikes because of the fact that he is a real showman, this guy is. Vinicius Oliveira is a real showman. You'll see him taunt his opponents mid-fight, and even if he's not even comfortably winning the fight, you'll see him taunting his opponents. But yeah, he has got a really hands-down, square style. On the ground, he's quite sloppy. I've seen him taken down in the clinch. I've seen him tripped in the clinch a number of times. But I don't think that's going to be a factor in this fight against Hugo Madrigal, because I don't think he's going to try and get the fight to the ground. Oliveira is more of a slip and counter kind of fighter. He's going to try and slip the strikes and come in with a big counter strike where he just kind of bites down on his mouth guard and tries to throw an erratic hook. That's the way that he gets most of his knockouts. It's by slipping and countering. He is 18-3 with 14 KOs and 2 subs, 2 decisions. So he has got a lot of finishing capabilities in this fight. Wherever the fight goes, he can submit you and he can knock you out. You can see there he's a heavy favourite, -435. I do think that's fair, especially when you look at Victor Madrigal's kind of. He's fought at a decent level. He has fought at a decent level. He's fought former UFC fighters like Jose Alberto Quinones, who was in the UFC and picked up quite a few wins. Fought the likes of Sugar Sean O'Malley. So he has got a decent record when it comes to the strength of schedule. Whereas Oliveira, you could say that his strength of schedule hasn't been as promising. But even then, you look at some of the records of the guys he's beat, 14-1. Ali Taleb, who's the guy that he lost to, he's a good fighter. He is a very good fighter. He's currently with PFL, if I'm not mistaken. And he is a really good fighter. Wherever the fight goes, he's very well rounded. He got knocked out by Ali Taleb with a big left hook. But then he bounced back against Yoshino with a good performance. So the thing that I'm looking at mostly with this matchup is the fact that Oliveira is completely unorthodox. Like I said, he's going to look to just completely turn Madrigal's lights out with one shot. And I kind of do see him doing that. But Madrigal's got a high, tight guard when it comes to his boxing defence. So it may be quite difficult for Oliveira to find home with those big counter strikes. But I'm betting on the fact that he will find those counter strikes, and I'm probably going to edge with a Vinicius Oliveira round 2 KO. Next up, we've got a women's flyweight bout. Ernesta Kareckaite versus Carli Judice. Hopefully I'm pronouncing Ernesta's surname right, but I mean, who knows. She was originally supposed to be fighting Shavkat Rakhmanov's sister, Sora Rakhmonova, but Sora pulled out of the fight, so she's been given Carli Judice. She's a kickboxing specialist, but I'm going to get into that in a second. Her last fight was a split decision win against Letitia Blow at Hexagon, where she won the flyweight title. That came because of a draw in their previous fight, so she went on and kind of rectified the fact that they drew. Like I said, she's a kickboxing specialist, but in my opinion, she's not the best at that in terms of her striking. She tries to stay out at range and be really long and rangy, but a lot of times you become really frustrated with watching her fight because she just... do you remember that clip with Macy Barber and I can't remember who it was, where they just kind of shadow box for 15 minutes? You see a lot of that with Ernesta. She kind of stays out at range and stays out of the power shots of her opponent and kind of just shadow boxes her opponent. She's gonna have a big reach advantage against quite a lot of her opponents because she is a long fighter at 5'9", but she doesn't use that very well in my opinion. Even though she's really long and rangy, you very rarely see her throwing kicks as well, which is quite concerning. She is boxing heavy, and like I said, when she's that long and rangy and she's got that much length with her legs, she doesn't really use it very well. She's got questionable takedown defense, but again, I don't think that's gonna be a factor in this fight against Carli, because again, Carli is a striking specialist, and she's someone that I was really impressed with in the film that I watched of her, albeit the film is very limited and it's not against the most exciting opponents. She's not fought at a very high level thus far in her career. You look at the records of the girls that she's fighting, and obviously it's women's MMA. You're not going to be getting very, very good opponents that early on in your career, so it's hard to take into consideration the strength of schedule they've both been doing it against, because you would say that favours Ernesta. You would say she's fought at a higher level. Hexagon, which is it's a good promotion in France. It's quite a high level promotion in France, so you could say that she's been doing it against a higher level, so maybe when she takes a drop down against Carli, she'll make it pay. But I don't think Carli is a drop down. I think Carli's probably a level up in opponent that Ernesta's going to be facing. Carli is a very good kickboxer herself. She uses her kicks very well, something that Ernesta doesn't do. Carli's got a very good variance of those kicks as well. You'll see her using those lead leg kicks, but then you'll see her switch it to a side kick to the body, a side kick to the head. She does use her kicks very well, and there's a good variance with them. Like I said though, there's not a lot of tape on her, so it's quite difficult to kind of break her tape down when there's not a lot of it. But what I have seen, she is a good fast boxer. Something that her coach, I noticed in one of her fights, her coaches were screaming at her to be more patient with her boxing, because she was getting quite impatient with it, and she was just trying to load up her strikes by flurrying in, but not being very accurate with them. So if she does in this fight look to be more patient, I can see her picking off Ernesta. She's going to try and put on the pressure, because like I said, Ernesta she's going to try and stay out at range and just kind of make it a bit tentative for her. So Carli is going to look to try and put on the pressure, I imagine, and I do think that's going to be tough for Ernesta. I don't think she's going to deal with that very well. At the moment, the line is, you've got Ernesta as a slight dog at plus 155 and Carli is a moderate favourite at minus 225. I do think that's fair. I do think it's fair, even though, like I've said, Ernesta's probably fought at a higher level. I do think Carli is the better fighter here. I do think she's the better striker. I'll probably edge with Carli by decision, but again, I could see her getting a stoppage. So I'm going to say decision, but I wouldn't be surprised to see her get a round 2 or 3 stoppage. After the flyweights, we return to the 145-pound division where we've got Danny Silva and Angel Pacheco. Interestingly, Danny Silva's last fight was at lightweight. He hasn't fought at lightweight before, but he moved up to lightweight for that fight, and then will move back down for this fight. So it'll be interesting to see how he looks moving back down after fighting at lightweight. Will that cut kind of affect him more than it has in the past? Who knows? In that fight, he beat Alex Ortega, who honestly was very sloppy as a fighter. So I wasn't that impressed with that victory. I'm not gonna lie. Ortega, he just isn't the best when it comes to kind of just being a good sound fighter. He's very unorthodox, so it was good of Silva to deal with that kind of unorthodox opponent, but it wasn't a win that I was really that impressed with. Angel Pacheco, though, on the other hand, he scored a come-from-behind victory against Wilson. I'm not going to try and pronounce his surname, but he scored a come-from-behind victory in that fight. In the first kind of proceedings of the first round, he didn't look bad. He was using his jab really well. He was staying out at range and just popping that jab out, using his lead leg kick well as well. But Wilson was the far faster, far more powerful striker, and he did drop Pacheco midway through the first round. Pacheco did well to recover from that though, and then scored the rear naked choke in round 2. So that was an impressive win for Pacheco, coming from behind, facing that adversity and getting the win. You can see there the line, plus 130 for Pacheco and minus 170 for Silva. I'm actually kind of edging with Pacheco here. Maybe that's a bit naive of me, but from what I've seen of both of these guys, I just think that Pacheco's got more of the capability of just staying out at range and popping that jab and being more patient than what Silva is. You see Silva he doesn't utilise a jab, and even though he's got the reach and height advantage in this fight, I very much doubt we see him utilise that. In his last few fights that I've seen of him, he kind of steps into the pocket with a hook and leaves his hands down quite a lot. His striking defence is quite questionable. If Pacheco can stay out at range despite being at a disadvantage in the reach, I could see him just being more patient and just picking him apart from range and using that jab and making it just a bit difficult for Silva to explode into the pocket. So I'm going to edge with Angel Pacheco here, and I'm going to say Angel Pacheco decision. And then next up after that, we've got another Dana White's Contender Series heavyweight fight. He's obviously trying to find talent constantly in the heavyweight division because it needs it. This time we've got Alexander Soldatkin versus Mario Piazzon. I'm going to be honest, there's not a lot of tape on Mario Piazzon at all. I could only find his debut. So that's a bit of an unfortunate kind of. So obviously that's a bit unfortunate because I can't really break down this fight to a major extent because I just can't find tape on Piazzon. The tape that I did find on him, he finished his opponent very early on. He dropped him with a strike and then got to his back and just rained down some hammer fist from back mount. So it's one of those ones where I just can't break down his game because there's not much tape on him whatsoever. Maybe I just haven't looked in the right places, but yeah, I can't find anything on him. Soldatkin, on the other hand, he is a very powerful heavyweight, of course. He commits to his punches very early on with a lot of power. But what you'll notice with Soldatkin is that he's very fast for a heavyweight. His jab's very fast. On a number of occasions, it's able to split the guard of his opponent because of how fast and powerful it is. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. He's a bit more of a new breed of heavyweight. He's faster, he's more athletic. But he does still hit like an absolute truck, so there is that. He's 14-3 with 9 wins by knockout, 3 submissions, 2 decisions. So in his last fight against the Bosnian, Benjamin Sehic, he did get taken down in that fight because Sehic is a jiu-jitsu specialist. But he did well in that area. He was patient and he didn't panic. And there was occasions where he was put in an uncomfortable position. He was mounted quite easily, but he did well to switch the position and end up in Sehic's guard, which obviously from there he doesn't want to be in the guard, but it's better than being fully mounted. So yeah, Soldatkin is a good heavyweight, and I do think he is UFC caliber because, like I've said, the UFC heavyweight division really needs a lot of work. So Soldatkin, I do expect to pick up this win. Unfortunately, like I said, I can't really break down this one a lot because there is a lack of footage on Piazzon. So I am going to go with Soldatkin round 1 knockout. The last 2 heavyweight Dana White Contender Series fight, I've predicted round 1 finishes, and both have happened so far. Wait, maybe last week I didn't. So yeah, I do predict Soldatkin will get the round 1 knockout. Unfortunate that I can't really break down this one to a large extent, but either way, I do think Soldatkin is a heavyweight, UFC heavyweight caliber. He's a -410 favourite, whereas Piazzon's coming in at a +275 underdog, which is probably granted because Soldatkin's been doing it at a far higher level. So yeah, I'm going to go with Soldatkin round 1 knockout. And then for the main event, we've got a welterweight matchup between Danny Barlow and Raheam Forrest. This is a very, very exciting fight. It's a kind of a mix-up of styles. We've got Raheam Forrest, who is the former Cage Fury welterweight champion, and you've got Danny Barlow, who is a law school MMA product. Law school, one of the best gyms. So when you're coming out of such a good gym like that, you automatically become someone that a lot of fans and a lot of kind of pundits want to look at because of the fact that you've been training with such high level of fighter. So this is going to be a really fun fight. Just starting off with Danny Barlow, his last fight he beat Jarius Gill, which was a first round knockout. It was within like 20 something seconds, which was very impressive. You see there, he's got 3 wins by knockout, 1 submission, 2 decisions. He's undefeated so far. He lost the combat jiu-jitsu fight, which obviously that doesn't count towards his professional record, so he is still undefeated. He fought at Cage Fury FC as well, so these two paths haven't crossed as of yet, but they're crossing paths now in the Contender Series. So they didn't cross paths in Cage Fury, but they are crossing paths now. He was originally supposed to be fighting Justin Burlington, who is a Cage Warriors fighter, but Burlington had visa issues, so he had to pull out. And then Raheam Forrest steps in, so quite late notice for Raheam Forrest. I think it's only a couple of weeks notice. I think it's even just a week's notice. I'm sure it's only been a week since Burlington pulled out. So that's kind of interesting, the fact that they're fighting on such short notice. Well, especially for Forrest. His loss came against Charles Radke, and that was for the title. So he lost the title there. He beat Colin Luberts for the title at the time, who is someone that trains with Colby Covington. So that was a good win for him. And being able to pick up a win against a well-rounded fighter like Luberts. But yeah, let's look at the matchup a bit more in detail. You haven't got a reach on Tapology for Forrest, so it's hard to take that into consideration. But he's not someone that I think would look at utilising that in this fight. He's going to try and get in the face of Danny Barlow, because Danny Barlow is more of a patient sharpshooter from range. Like I said before, he's a law school fighter, so that gym itself, it's really, really strong. Barlow uses his kicks really well. You see him very often use oblique kicks to the lead leg of his opponent to try and slow down that forward pressure. And he's very patient with his striking. That's something you'll see with him. He times his boxing really well, because he doesn't always fight on the front foot. He can fight on the back foot, and he does it really well. But his timing with his hands is something that I've been really impressed with when I've seen him. And he picks his shots really well. Whereas Raheam Forrest, he's very fast, very powerful. And he's going to look to try and get in the face of Barlow and kind of use that dirty boxing to get into the range and just land one of those massive strikes that he's going to try and land. Because, like I said, he is very, very powerful. I see Forrest trying to put on the forward pressure and Barlow just trying to counter shot his way out of that kind of those pocket exchanges. I see him trying to counter strike his way out of those pocket exchanges and kind of just keep the fight at range, where I think he will have an advantage. Forrest uses his stance switching well as well, which is something I've noticed in his fights. Danny Barlow's a long southpaw, rangy striker, so maybe Forrest's going to try and stance switch his way into the pocket while using that dirty boxing. And like I said, he's going to try and land that heavy shot. You can see there the odds are very close for this matchup. It's almost an even pick'em fight. -120. So Barlow is a very, very slight favourite with Forrest at -110. The line will probably change by fight night. I see that line changing. At the moment, I'm favouring Barlow very, very narrowly. I think the way that I see him doing it is, like I said, staying out at range, picking his shots from range, staying out of those dirty boxing exchanges, and just staying on the back foot, counter-striking his way out of any of those exchanges, and using his kick really well, which is something, like I said, I've noticed he does very well in his fights. I will say that I'm gonna predict a Danny Barlow decision in this fight. We've seen him pick up decisions before. I do think that's where he could hold the advantage if he, like I said, stays out at range, stays out of the way of Forrest's really powerful explosions. And if he's able to do that, I think he can pick up the decision win. But yeah, that's the main event that we've got to look forward to. I think it'll be a really, really good fight. Two fighters that I do think are UFC caliber. So whoever loses this fight, and if neither of them get a contract, I think they're two guys that we will see in the UFC soon. Whether that's short notice replacements or just getting contracts, I do think we'll see them both in the UFC soon. But yeah, that's gonna do it for the breakdown. Check out the betting guide in the link Check out the betting guide link in the description for the plays for this card and any other cards. But yeah, I'll catch you in the next one.